go. So here's the Bhante Sujato's translation of this. And Agi Sutta. And I also have Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation here. And so you see there's ellipsis here. It says, then in the morning, a number of bhikkhus dressed and taking their bowls and robes entered Sawati for alms. So then this, I have the sutta, it's just a couple of suttas back. Basically, they went to, it was early, so they went to the park where the wanderers of other sects gather and have their discussion. And then the wanderers said, friends, the ascetic Gautama teaches the Dhamma and the discipline thus. Come, bhikkhus, abandon the 5 hindrances, the corruptions of mind, that weaken wisdom and develop correctly the 7 factors of enlightenment. And then they say, we too teach this. So, and then we too teach the Dhamma to our disciples thus. And then, so then the Buddhists, the monks don't say anything. They neither delighted or rejected the statement. And then they left and they reported this to the Lord Buddha. I'm just kind of paraphrasing it, but you can see it here for yourself. And then we get to this point when the wanderers of other sects speak thus. So we can go back to the sutta that we're going to be looking at. But that's just the background. So when the wanderers of other sects speak thus, they should be asked, friends, when the mind becomes sluggish, which factors of enlightenment is untimely to develop on that occasion? And which factors of enlightenment is timely to develop on that occasion? Then, friends, when the mind becomes excited, which factors of enlightenment is untimely to develop on that occasion? And which factors of enlightenment is timely to develop on that occasion? Being asked thus, those wanderers would not be able to reply, and further they would meet with vexation. I love this. For what reason? Because that would not be within their domain. I do not see anyone, bhikkhus, in this world with its devas, Brahma, it's in this generation with its ascetics and Brahmins, its devas and humans who could satisfy the mind with an answer to these questions, except the Tathagata, a disciple of the Tathagata, or one who has heard it from them. So in the notes, there's something about that some of the teachers were kind of plagiarizing the Buddhist teaching, but they didn't fully understand it. And that's why they were saying, well, we teach that too. Why, how are we so different? But they didn't have a deeper understanding of it, so they wouldn't be able to answer the question. So he doesn't mention all 5 hindrances here, but he's talking about sluggishness of mind and excitability. And this is how the mind actually, if you are sitting in meditation, you might see your mind wavering back and forth between excitement, and then the mind settles down, and then you feel like you're about to fall over on your face asleep. And because of the hindrances, our mind might be sluggish or might be excited. So sensual desire can bring up excitement. Anger can bring excitement too. But if you're really trying to suppress the anger, you can kind of really get a dull. You get boredom and dullness. Actually, boredom is a kind of aversion. It's a subtle kind of aversion. And doubt can get your mind all agitated, or it can get the mind also kind of bogged down too, because it's just, the mind just gets overwhelmed with doubt. I think maybe if we're really observant of our minds, we can see that. And then, of course, the dullness and drowsiness itself is a hindrance, and the restlessness and anxiety is a hindrance. So they can go into those either direction, with the dullness or the sluggishness. How does Bhante Sujato, what does he call it? Yeah. Sluggishness and restless. So there's the restlessness and sluggishness. So what to do? So first thing we notice our mind is either sluggish or restless. And then what do we do at that time? So the Lord Buddha is going to explain that to us. Would someone like to read? We could read, maybe, let's see. I'm going to read from Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Would you like to read? Do you want the book? You can start. The sluggish mind, untimely. You just read that one section.
On an occasion, bhikkhus, when the mind becomes sluggish, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, bhikkhus, and it is difficult to arouse it with those things. Suppose, bhikkhus, a man wants to make a small fire flare up. If he throws wet grass, wet cow dung, and wet timber into it, sprays it with water, and scatters soil over it, would he be able to make that small fire flare up? No, venerable sir. So too, bhikkhus, on an occasion when the mind becomes sluggish, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, bhikkhus, and it is difficult to arouse it with those things.
So we can pause here and just ponder that. So it's interesting. It's talking about enlightenment factors. And I think there's an aspect of factors developed for awakening or for enlightenment. And how is it that we bring these up? How do we bring these up? And how is it that they themselves are kind of like not the mind is out of balance because don't have them in balance themselves. Does anyone want to speak to that a little bit? I think he's talking about, he says that concentration, so that's samadhi, and passaddhi is a tranquility, and so equanimity, the upekkha. So if the mind is getting sluggish, that's interesting. Even equanimity would be not helpful at that time. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? Let's see. Ananea, yes, please. Unmute yourself.
One would be rapture, and right effort. And I can't remember the third one. There were three.
Yeah, those would counteract that. But why would equanimity cause you to be dull? Or
well, if sluggishness versus dullness, I mean, if you're really, really slowed, equanimity doesn't mean you're like so passive that you're not aware of what's happening. And sluggishness for me would indicate that you're really pretty, like you said, probably if you're not nodding off, you're on the verge of nodding off. And equanimity is a balanced state. So it wouldn't fit that kind of already over the edge into sluggishness, etc.
Mm-hmm. So it's I'm kind of seeing it a little bit out of balance, maybe, and then you can't bring up the mind with equanimity because it's already too far down. But yeah, thank you. Yes. So anyone else want to say anything about that?
I can say something.
No? We could go on to the next.
Someone said something.
Me, I can
Oh.
mention something.
Yes, I can't. Oh, who's speaking?
Oh, it's me, Satina.
Okay, I can't see you on the screen here, but
All right, no
go
problem.
ahead.
Yeah. Well, for me, tranquility, concentration, equanimity are all kind of factors of clarity, and it seems like sluggishness is like the opposite of clarity. So, say makes sense. Tracks.
So maybe I'm thinking it's not really quite, yeah, we're trying to apply a factor, but since the mind is sluggish, it's not going to be helpful because the mind is already so dull. It's not going to actually be a true awakening factor at that point, because how can we have any clarity? Or I mean, actually the experience of sluggishness is an unpleasant experience. How could we be equanimous? So I guess it's a wrong, it wouldn't at that point, it wouldn't be a really awakening factor. So Smita has her hand up.
So in my experience, what happens like if I try to concentrate my mind, or we're tranquil or equanimous, when we're sort of already in the lazy state, so the mind becomes calmer when I try to concentrate it, or it's or even if I'm being equanimous, so it's already like on the lazy side, and then you calm your mind even further, and then you fall asleep.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah.
That's been my meditation experience. In fact, today I've learned why I was falling asleep when I was meditating around bedtime. Yeah, that's it from me.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so we need to be observing what is needed in the mind. And so this is what the Lord Buddha is starting to point out here with this, is that the wrong time. And also what is our object of meditation? Is it a calming object? Is it a calming way of approaching the object? And if we're falling asleep and adding more calm to it, yeah, he's like saying adding wet cow dung to a fire and scattering wet dirt on it. Okay. So would someone else like to read the next section about what's timely at this point? Those at the Hermitage? Timely mind.
On an occasion, because when the mind becomes sluggish, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of rapture. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, and it is easy to arouse it with those things. Suppose, because a man wants to make a small fire flare up. If he throws dry grass, dry cow dung, and dry timber into it, blows on it, and does not scatter soil over it, would he be able to make the small fire flare up? Yes, Venerable Sir. So too, bhikkhus, on an occasion when the mind becomes sluggish, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of rapture. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, bhikkhus, and it is easy to arouse it with those things.
So the Lord Buddha is saying to develop these factors, one or all of them. So we can investigate the state of sluggishness itself. The mental state. So there's a discrimination of states, meaning to see the fact that we are aware of the state of our mind. And in that case, how would we arise energy? Does anyone have ideas about that? How to arouse energy when the mind is sluggish? Yes, Satina?
Yes, one I've heard of is to open the eyes. That seems to make sense. Or to stand up. Or to practice walking meditation. Or to go outside. Or to come back inside.
Yeah, those are definitely ways of bringing up energy to actually support wakefulness. And so we're noticing the mind is sluggish. Another thing is what kind of object of meditation do we have, and is it too calming, and do we want to? One suggestion is to change the object of meditation to bring up brighter states of mind. And one teacher suggested Buddhanusati or metta. Or we might be shifting our attention to different parts of the body, or maybe a subha. Has anyone tried working with energizing the mind with states like this? With the different types of objects of meditation? Yes? How about investigating your own mind? Oh, Anadea, yes? And please unmute yourself.
See, Tina also mentioned walking meditation, which would obviously be a good thing if you're sluggish, is to do walking meditation for a period and then come back and see if you can sit. And it seems that doing body sweeps also might help to get energy moving.
Yeah, more active. Yeah, so I've noticed for myself, if I'm just settling in one spot with the awareness of the breath, and then my mind starts getting really kind of foggy, I start seeing real fogginess, then I will start sweeping more. I will start something all more energetic to bring up energy. Any other ideas about that? Working with bringing up energy. So yeah, so this metaphor with the fire is that we don't want the fire to go out, but we want the fire to be somewhat contained, so it's safe. It's not going to go outside of its boundaries and cause problems, but just enough is going to bring a nice glow, nice warmth, illuminating. So it's a balancing the mind. Should we continue with reading? I'll read again. This is the excited mind untimely. On an occasion, bhikkhus, when the mind becomes excited, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of rapture. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, bhikkhus. It is difficult to calm it down with those things. Suppose, bhikkhus, a man wants to extinguish a great bonfire. If he throws dry grass, dry cow dung, and dry timber into it, blows on it and does not scatter soil over it, would he be able to extinguish that great bonfire? No, venerable sir. So too, bhikkhus, on an occasion when the mind becomes excited, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of rapture. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, bhikkhus. It is difficult to calm it down with those things. So I think this is like a really agitated mind. Sometimes you can kind of unravel and calm the mind down by looking at it when there is some activity in the mind, but once the mind is really agitated and you try to, this is my experience, I can't really stay with really penetrating what's going on. It just keeps getting scattered. So that's investigating what's going on, just adding more to the verbal formation. The verbal formation just keeps perpetuating itself, and then it's hard to just really stay on track. So this is talking about excitedness of mind. So also with rapture, you want to get the body and mind too agitated. And also energy too. So I think this is maybe pretty easy to understand. With this being said, okay, Satina?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to this experience. The image that kind of comes to fore in this experience, and I forget the name of it, but it's like, you know, that like old arcade game where there's a ball. Oh, it's called pinball. Just remember. It's like a pinball mind, like
silver
it's
ball.
just like hitting everything and everything's lighting up, and it won't slide back into its pocket. But and I have a question. Is it time for questions, or should I hold it up to the end?
It's if it's on this particular section that we're looking at, untimely, the excited mind.
Yeah,
It's talking about the metaphor of the pinball machine and the lights going
Mhm.
on and it's bouncing everywhere.
Yeah.
That's a good metaphor.
It's this part, but also this part in relation to the first two parts that we had gone through. The question is, have you experienced when the mind kind of rapidly or somewhat rapidly jumps between sluggishness and then excitement? And the analogy I had is I was tired yesterday because I did a lot of things the day before that, but I wanted to have some energy, so I had a cup of coffee, which I have about every 6 months. The point is I don't drink coffee, so I drank the coffee, and it reminded me that when the mind is kind of sluggish and then it's excited, it's kind of like when you drink coffee, because you drink it because you're tired, and then you get all jumpy, but you're still tired. So I was just kind of raising this. I know the Buddha's kind of doing it very well. It's like, okay, we're, one part at a time. We're not kind of mixing it. But sometimes in experience, they don't stay in one category. They kind of, different things arise that seem to oppose each other. And you're like, oh, I'm sluggish. No, actually, I'm really not sluggish. And then you're back to being sluggish. So I just want to see your response to what happens if you kind of put it all in a blender. What if it's not just one state for that meditation.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the mind does have a tendency to go, and I think this is why the Lord Buddha is talking about. Usually, yeah, it can be like for a longer period of time, agitated and then sink into sluggishness. But I think if you're really trying to bring the mind up out of sluggishness too forcefully, then the mind will get agitated. The mind is agitated for a while, a short while, and then it gets exhausted again. And then you try to bring it up again. And then you're saying you drink coffee. So you have this chemical reaction going on in the mind. And so, yeah, so trying to find how to balance that. How do we balance that out? And if both are going on at the same time. I think what often, especially, it depends on what's going on in your life, but we can start working with balancing that out when we start noticing it getting out of kilter sooner. Usually what happens, you don't notice it until the mind is very agitated. And then if you're trying to use force to suppress that, then the mind will get exhausted and then you fall asleep. And then just so that, I guess it's either like kind of a roller coaster or something like that might be going on. So if we can notice the agitation of the mind before it gets too extreme, it's good. You'll get more and more attuned to what's going on. And there's another simile that the Buddha uses of the goldsmith, and the goldsmith has the gold in well, at this point, as you've taken all the rough, the dirt out and the rocks out, and you're getting to a point where you just have the ore, but it still has impurities in it. So it's not in a rough stage, which would be like taking the rocks out and washing it. And that's what's happening when we're seeing the mind. So we get to a point where it's just the ore that just needs to be smelted. So they talk about the goldsmith will have the gold over in the crucible, and then they have to watch the fire carefully. And then when the fire starts dying down, they take the billows and blow on it. If it starts getting too hot, then they just sprinkle a little bit of water on it. And then sometimes they just look on. So then it's like, it's not so erratic like this. It gets more and more, the movement of the mind isn't so great. So we're learning over time how to get that balance. So it's good to notice, yeah, okay, right now it's really quite rocky, and even that the coffee is a factor, or something can be happening in our lives that really stir our minds up, and that's just what happens. Something really disturbing happens in our lives, and then so we can see the mind is extremely agitated, but we shouldn't try and suppress it. Then that's where the roller coaster thing happens, is trying to really suppress the mind when it's agitated. So just trying to hold it with care somehow. If that's making sense. Yeah. So should we move on to the next section, or does anyone have any one? Who would like to read Yes?
On an occasion, bhikkhus, when the mind becomes excited, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, bhikkhus, and it is easy to calm it down with those things. Suppose, bhikkhus, a man wants to extinguish a great bonfire. If he throws wet grass, wet cow dung, and wet timber into it, sprays it with water, and scatters soil over it, would he be able to extinguish that great bonfire? Yes, Venerable Sir. So too, bhikkhus, on an occasion when the mind becomes excited, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, bhikkhus, and it is easy to calm it down with those things. But mindfulness, bhikkhus, I say, is always useful.
Sorry, the connection was a little bit off, but the last part was, suppose a man wants to extinguish the great fire, throws wet grass and wet cow dung and wet timber onto it and sprays it with water and scatters it all over, it would be able to extinguish it. And the answer is yes, Venerable Sir. So, and then the enlightenment factor, on that occasion, when the mind becomes excited, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, samadhi, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, and it is easy to calm it down with those things. And mindfulness is always useful. So, yeah, it's interesting that there's these terms, but it is saying to develop these, to bring to do, so they're maybe not fully developed because the mind is still out of balance. So you can see how the enlightenment factors are like, there's 3 on the side of calming and 3 on the side of elevating or bringing the mind up. And so it would seem that they would be all working together and that the mind would be balanced. But here we're trying to reach a balance of mind by applying the appropriate factor to the situation. So what would we do to bring up passaddhi or tranquility if the mind is excited? Venerable Kachina, you're smiling and looking. What do you have an idea on that?
Seminary Sachima is whispering something that she doesn't want to say aloud. But I think it's fine if she says it aloud.
I was just saying the contemplation of death seems to calm the mind down very quickly.
So well, if we notice the mind is excited, then Maranasati. Applying Maranasati is kind of sobering. Ananea, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, mindfulness in general, number one, and then what Venerable Satima said, but also the breath, mindfulness of turning to monitoring the breath mindfulness of breathing
Mhm.
will calm down for sure.
So we observe our mind is agitated and we bring our awareness back
the
to the
breath.
breath if we were trying to be aware of the breath. Or if the mind is really agitated, we change subjects to the Maranasati, mindfulness of death. Yes, so just yeah, I think some of it has to do with if what we're doing in the first place isn't working, we try something else. Or we remind ourselves, oh, this is not my object of meditation right now, and bring it back to our object. And then the last sentence is, but mindfulness, because it's always useful. So this is kind of interesting in the 5 controlling faculties. This is mindfulness is also kind of the balancing point too for the 5 faculties. So it's kind of in the middle with, even though it's when the enlightenment factors, it's actually the kind of the ignition. It's the how if we've really established ourselves in mindfulness, then the other factors will start rising up. But it's also seems here, it's indicating it to be, I'm interpreting it as a balance point. And Ananaya started to touch on that too, that the mindfulness can calm the mind, but it also can bring the mind up. And also the mindfulness is aware of what's going on in the mind, whether the mind is starting to get sluggish or starting to get too excited. So if we have the mindfulness really sharp and seeing that wavering of the mind. And I think the wavering can be, even in a single period, it can be quite a bit. And then we'll try to, just through observation, can get more subtle. And then the mind becomes more still. Just through observation that can happen. But if it's really erratic, you might at least be able to get the wavering, so it's not so disturbing. A little bit more. The mind will be more peaceful, and then the variances aren't so great. So this is the sutta. We could discuss more about the sutta, or people have questions or ideas about what's just been read and a little bit of what we've been speaking about. Yes, Satina?
Yeah. I'm reflecting on the whole sutta and the last part that we just read, and I'm noticing we're talking about this in the context of formal meditation, but the sutta doesn't say the mind only in formal meditation. It says the mind anytime, right? Whenever it's sluggish or whenever it's excited. So I was kind of applying it, as a lay person and outside the monastery, out and about. Like on a few days ago, I had an unexpected sensory whirlwind of a day, and I was just trying to bring these teachings to, how can I apply these? Because I was, on the street and all these stores and all these things, and the quality of and so I would say that was kind of like an excited mind, just because there was so much stimulus. But I think it also kind of made me feel like it was a very like graspy mind. It's like a very like, oh, I want this and I want this, and like all of this stuff is happening, and I'm trying to kind of understand like how can I rebalance it through, you know, the factor of tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And what's occurring to me is, you know, if by using concentration it's like, okay, I'm just gonna do that one task. I'm not gonna try to do all the 5 tasks. I'm not gonna get all 5 things. I'm just gonna, okay, I just want to cross the street and enter that store. And like, and with equanimity, like not putting everything in my basket, just kind of like, these are the things I need, and putting those things in my basket. So I guess I'm just coming more at this, you know, out off of the meditation cushion, and just whether we're in the world or doing all the other things we need to do.
Yeah, what you're saying is really important, because when we're out in the world, or even in the monastery, wherever we are, what we're doing throughout the day can agitate our mind of what we encounter throughout the day. Or we can just get kind of dull and checked out. So I think what you're actually talking about is mindfulness. Mindfulness is there, and then having to focus. So in a way that's kind of the word, that concentration, samadhi. But I mean, if you're using limiting what you're paying attention to, and really focusing more, excuse me, on one activity or another, like really just like awareness of crossing the street safely. And also that's sense restraint. It's a type of sense restraint. So you're really trying to focus on the activity of the task at hand. So you're applying sati sampajanya, I think. And so what's appropriate, what's suitable, and staying. I was trying to remember the 4 sampajanyas, and there's the appropriateness or suitability, and there's the gochara, which is the pasture that we're staying in our with our object, or staying with the task at hand. I see. And then there's asamoha, which is non-confusion. Suitability, purpose. I think that's suitability, purpose, domain, or range, or pasture is the gochara. And then the asamoha is non-confusion. So it sounds like that's what you were working with. You're applying your mind to your task, and you're trying not to get confused and with a lot of sensory input, and you're trying to do what was appropriate. Yeah, so throughout the day, and then to keep the mind from being overwhelmed and too excited and too distracted, and that'll happen during the day too, where you get too excited and then the mind just gets dull because it's overwhelmed. And some people do in their lives, they go through periods of these, either throughout the day or throughout different periods of their life, through going through being very excited to being kind of dull and depressed. So to really be aware of these fluctuations of the mind through the daily activities and through our lives, and just And how do we care for that? How do we keep it in balance? So yeah, that's really important. Satina has something else she wants to say.
So just want to add this other one thing that occurred to me, that this sutta would be very helpful in applying to is actually in driving. I think this would be very helpful for me because I always try to practice driving meditation, but you can't be so laid back in driving, right? But you also can't be, but there's also so many information. Well, because I'm driving in a city area, there's so much, there's people and there's so many cars. So it's easy to be like, to almost get fearful, but so not to get too fearful, but then not to be so slow that you're not reacting appropriately to the cars and the people around you. So that just kind of occurred to me. I thought I'd throw that in there. Thank you for your thoughts and listening.
Mindfulness. So definitely mindfulness. And yet, what I used to do actually was metta. I would, every living being out there I saw, I was directing loving kindness to. So I was aware of people in cars and the cars around me. And so my awareness was thinking about their safety, thinking about their well-being. So I was tracking the traffic around me with loving kindness. And that helped me a lot to keep calm. And if somebody was cutting me off or doing something like that, then I wouldn't get upset. I would have just wished for their safety. May they be safe. So Susan has a hand up, I see.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I can't get on my screen today, but I feel this is a really good sutta for me. I want to remember the insight I had. Thank you for taking my hand question. I think I noticed anger. There's certain things that will stir up anger in me, and it like especially if it's when somebody's got an injustice or children or things, sometimes I can get angry a little, and the Dhamma helps me to realize this is the way this world is. But anyway, I still sometimes find that anger, or especially, and there's certain people, so that's the other thing. Most of the time I'm not feeding it, but I have a girlfriend who is not in the practice, and I notice she's very into the news, and she'll and I more anyway, sometimes she shares what's going on, and I don't have any interest really, but she shared something yesterday, and it was about a child, and it just, the social issues for me, it stirs up. I started responding with just generally, but it's a form of anger at these things. And so I feel this sutta, I can use this. I haven't done that before, but I totally can use calming, because I know how to do that with my muscles and just practice calming, calm whenever there's anger like that arises, which is not all the time. Certain things that will, like I said, trigger it. And I can really give it calming. I know how to do that. And I haven't really thought of that before. I do a mindfulness, but I can actually practice equanimity, realize this is, put it in perspective, that it's not going to help anything for me to come out of my peaceful state, and get agitated like that. And so to try to the concentration, come back to my come back to my values. My value is to, you know, the concentration I feel is a part of being there for myself, to have my concentration on what's important to me is to have peace and to be practicing. So thank you. I think I can definitely use those for these kind of things that come up. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome, Susan. Yeah, certainly anger can be at the realm of excitement and the fire out of control. And we end up burning ourselves and possibly other people around us. So yeah, to be able to, if we can't do anything about a situation, there is no point in being angry and upset. If we can do something about a situation, if we come to it with a balanced mind, then it's more likely to be effective in caring for it. So yeah, I think to keep developing our inner peace really is essential in any situation, rather than just allowing the anger to kind of just destroy ourselves, hurt ourselves. So any more thoughts? Yes, I hear a voice. Yes. I see Patipada. Is someone who's leaving? I think we've changed views. Let me see the view here. See more people. Did someone have Aya Brahmawara, do you have anything to say about this sutta? Have you worked with these elements?
Yeah, thank you very much, Aya, for this sutta. It's a really wonderful sutta. And what I'm really taking in is the kind of encouragement to be aware of how we are, you know, and how is the mind? And then knowing how the mind is, then figuring how to practice in the best possible way. So I'm really appreciating this teaching. I had a question for you, Aya. You know, I've come across somewhere else. Well, the fact that there's an order to these 7 enlightenment factors. And the Buddha, in 1 or 2 suttas, he gives this kind of progression. So you start with mindfulness, and mindfulness leads to investigation of Dharma, and so forth. And I'm curious about that, because I'd be interested to hear what you think of the fact that the energizing factors seem to come first, and then the calming, peaceful factors, enlightenment factors seem to follow on at the end. So does that mean we start off with a very sluggish mind that needs energizing, and then over time the mind becomes very energized, and then we have to calm it? Is there a kind of order or not?
Well, see, yeah, that's a very good question. So I've been thinking about this particular sutta because it is grouping them in the factors that energize the mind and the factors that calm down the mind. And then our minds can be agitated or too sluggish long before we're awake, awakening, and there are awakening factors. And then there is in the Anapanasati Sutta, after the 4 foundations of mindfulness have been fulfilled within the Anapanasati practice, then the mind has been established in mindfulness unremittently, and then the other factors start emerging kind of in sequence. And but that's why I keep trying to think about it's like factors for awakening and of awakening. So when we get to that point where the mindfulness is unremittent and it is fully developed, and then it's already, the ball is rolling towards awakening because we've developed the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And then we're getting to the point, you notice it's getting to the point of the relinquishment, the freedom, those factors, vimutti, pati nisaga, and fading away, the fading away. So we're already the ball is already rolling towards awakening because our mind has developed those 4 foundations so thoroughly, and then then the progression happens in that particular order. But I think in the meantime, we can be working. We're working with the mindfulness. We're working with investigating our own mind and the states that are arising. We're working, developing ways to bring up energy. And then when the mind is quite energetic, the mind naturally becomes very joyful. We'll have PT arising, and then that PT will kind of settle down and smooth out into tranquility. So these kind of things will happen, I think, even before their actual fully developed awakening factors. And then we'll be developing samadhi. So I don't know, Ajahn Brahmali says that this is just kind of almost an automatic process. Once you get to a certain point, that these things just unfold one by one. But in the meantime, we can be intentionally developing equanimity. So it's not necessarily having to be in a particular order until there's that unfolding that's described in the suttas. And that's why this sutta is kind of, it's saying, okay, well, in this case do this, and in this case do that, so it's not like saying to do it and then mindfulness is always useful, but so I think that's my idea with it. And it's not like we don't have any of those factors until we're fully awakened. I think there are factors developed. And then the sutta also says it's fulfilling. So I think until they're unfolding on their own in the process of the final awakening, then they don't necessarily have to be in that order.
Yeah, that really makes sense. I thank you so much.
So it looks like Satima has something to say. Yes.
Oh yeah, yes. I was just very much appreciating Venerable Brahmavara's question, and was reflecting that last week during our class, I mentioned a sutta in Anguttara Nikaya 1061, in which the Lord Buddha described the process of nutriment, how one factor of the path naturally leads to the other. And if it's okay, I'd just like to read just a small section to answer that I think would be helpful to answer that question.
Mhm.
It'd be all right.
Sure, go ahead.
In Gurtanakai 1061, the Lord Buddha says, I say bhikkhus that true knowledge and liberation have a nutriment. They are not without nutriment. And what is the nutriment for true knowledge and liberation? It should be said, the 7 factors of enlightenment. The 7 factors of enlightenment too, I say, have a nutriment. They are not without nutriment. And what is the nutriment for the 7 factors of enlightenment? It should be said, the 4 establishment of mindfulness. The 4 establishment of mindfulness too, I say, have a nutriment. They are not without nutriment. Now, what is the nutriment for the 4 establishments of mindfulness? It should be said, the 3 kinds of good conduct. The 3 kinds of good conduct too, I say, have a nutriment. They are not without nutriment. And what is the nutriment for the 3 kinds of good conduct? It should be said, restraint of the sense faculties. And it goes on and on and on to say, just as when it is raining and the rain pours down in thick droplets on a mountaintop, the water flows down along the slope and fills the clefts, gullies, and creeks. These becoming full, fill up the pools. These becoming full, fill up the lakes. These becoming full, fill up the streams. These becoming full, fill up the rivers. And these becoming full, fill up the great ocean. Thus, there is nutriment for the great ocean. And it is in this way, it becomes full. So I just thought that was a beautiful explanation of how these factors naturally flow one into the other. But I hope it was helpful to share that.
Yeah, and I think there's a Sati Sampajanya is in there, and Yoniso Manasikara. And
Yes.
those are like, Yoniso Manasikara is akin to the investigating. I think that you're directing your mind in a particular way, an appropriate way, a careful way. And then the Sati Sampajanya, there's the Sati is in there repeatedly, I think.
Yeah.
It's developing. So for them to become, and that's the stream. I think that's the streams all converging and filling up until they get to the point where they're really fulfilled the enlightenment factor. But I see that Ruwanti has a little icon hand there. Yes, you want to unmute yourself? Did you have something to say?
Yes, I just wanted to add, Ajahn Sona did a virtual retreat end of last year, and the theme was 7 factors of enlightenment. So if anyone who is interested in learning more details about the 7 factors of enlightenment, that is a wonderful resource. The talks are in Ajahn Sona's YouTube channel. So I just want to share that with my friends, Dhamma friends.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Ajahn Brahmali also has done teachings on it. There's quite a number of esteemed teachers who have had retreats. So it's good to, yeah, I think it's all going to take us, it's going to take all of us time and a lot of devotion to this, but it is possible. And we're just about out of time. Do you have something quick to say, Ananaya?
Yeah, to Rawanti, actually, Ajahn Sona did it again. He just finished his Enlightenment Factors retreat. So it's the new one, or this current one is on YouTube as well.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. And yeah, mindfulness is always useful. We have to
Always.
I saw Sitsina had her hands in Anjali, but I'm not sure if she wanted to add something.
I think it's probably about time for us to end, but thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I think maybe she was Anjali, putting her hands on Anjali for the Edney, but anyway, so I'm going to turn towards the Buddha image here. I'm going to actually turn the camera. So that we can bow. If you have your own little image to bow towards, you can bow in your own dwelling towards your image, or you could turn towards the Buddha image here. Ah, don't fall off. My cushion is very much towards the edge here.
Don't fall off.
I'll try not to. Use mindfulness of the body. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivati Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sangha Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good seeing all of you. Thank you for your patient attention.
Thank you.
I hope things are going well at the Hermitage. Whoops, they disappeared. I was going to ask because there are more.
They're there, so that's a good thing.
They're still with the internet, so that's a good sign. They haven't been watched away. Okay, good seeing you all. Bye-bye.